today Dr. Surbika Maheshwari, who has done many roles in her academic and social life. She is an experienced trainer, career counselor, consultant, physiotherapist, and is currently working as assistant professor at IP College, University of Delhi. Dr. Maheshwari has previously delivered lectures on various aspects like stress and coping mechanisms, mental illness, motivation, psychological support in disaster management, tackling the teenagers, peer learning, human rights, ethics education, depression, personal and professional development in the universities and colleges of repute. She has been kind enough to deliver lectures for faculty induction programs, development programs, and workshops at Ramanujan College in the past. Today, Dr. Maheshwari will be addressing us on a very relevant and appropriate topic, effective management of education in online environment. On behalf of the Department of Management Studies, Ramanujan College, I welcome you, ma'am, to address us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anchal, for a warm introduction. And always thank you to Ramanujan for being so kind and so considerate enough to call me and always appreciate what I do. I'm sure that I always do not do something so nice and fabulous. Just a small little, I think it was just like we have typos when we write, we can just have small errors when we speak. Just so that the audience is clear, I'm really not a physiotherapist. That is taking too much. I'm actually a psychotherapist, which is completely two different fields and
Actually, ma'am,
completely two different areas of
yeah,
specialization. I'm sorry, maybe I heard it wrong.
you know,
Online management. We can make the others. I'm so
I said
sorry if I would have
psycho.
heard it wrong, but I thought I heard physiotherapist, and that
Okay,
is giving me too much credit. I'm not that. So,
no
uh,
problem, ma'am. Although I
thank
said
you
it.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing something which is so pertinent, so important, and something which really all of us are grappling so hard with. I'm sure I have a lot of teachers. Well, the participants list shows 101, which is like a long list of teachers who have joined in this session. So, what is this online education all about? And why are we required to really do this? And then the most important question, how are we to do it as effectively as we possibly can? Okay, quickly, I think on our chat boxes, or maybe if we can interact, I have no clue how I can interact with the participants, but maybe the chat is a good space where I can possibly interact with the participants. If any four, five of you can tell me what are the two most important difficulties you are facing with online education. What is the most challenging? What is the most difficult? And what takes the greatest toll on you when we are talking about online education? Anybody, any 105 of you can quickly just write in your chat boxes. I think I'm able to see the chat box. Yes, I'm able to see the chat box. The first two suggestions say student engagement and students' attention span. Oh, third is also engaging the students. Fantastic. Numerical paper, network problems, student attention, technological glitches. Fantastic. Correct. Fantastic. Lovely. We have at least a few responses coming in. Student attention. Yeah, much of what I had already thought. The first, so we are teachers because there are some students. We take pride in our profession because there are some students to pride in us. And we actually feel satisfied, happy, good after a lecture because we see that some students have really grasped what we were trying to teach, right? And the first thing that gets compromised in an online space is apparently just that. It is our interaction, our face to face interaction with the students. And most of us as teachers over the years have trained ourselves to very astutely catch facial expressions, catch how students are behaving in class, whether they can understand things or not. Also, being able to actually facilitatively teach in an environment where the student becomes an important recipient and also a participant of what we are teaching. So now we are saddled with a problem where there are students, perhaps there are lots and lots of students, but the interaction is much, much lower, almost compromised. So I see that there are about 100 of you who have joined in here, but I cannot see all of you. I cannot see you sitting. I can't see some pretty saris. I cannot see facial expressions. I'm unable to make eye contact. I am unable to move around the big hall that Ramanujan would often give for such lectures. All of this is most definitely an impediment. So let us first start with, how do you start engaging student in an online world? How do you start communicating to the student such that he wants to sit up and listen to you? Small reality check. Honestly, in our classes, which are typically anywhere between 50 to about 75 students, that's the normal trend. I hope that's the normal trend for all of you as well. I hope none of you are taking classes which is 150 students. And I don't think we are fortunate enough anymore to be taking classes which are as small as 30, which that is how small our classes used to be when I started out as a teacher, as a lecturer. And so every year, every challenge, every opportunity actually comes with us learning some new things. So is the online world actually. So the reality check that I was speaking about as we talk about student engagement is also the fact that while we are teaching in a class, while we are teaching in a lecture hall, we know that every student is not listening to us at the same time. That's true, that's real. In the online space, that just becomes a little more real. It just becomes a little more jarring that I don't even know whether they're listening to me or not. Right? So, at least in the offline space, I know some of you are listening to me, but in the online space, I'm not sure even if some of you are listening to me. So now the onus of making the lecture communicative, interactive, making the lecture interesting enough, all actually lies on me. So what am I supposed to do? Right? Some obvious tips: actually start requesting students to put on their videos as often as they can and as much as the network connectivity etc allows them, right? Having some videos on is extremely helpful, and I'm also learning as I go along. I'm also trying to grapple with this online world. None of us are really trained into it, right? So having some videos on is definitely a huge motivator for the teacher. The second is understand about attention spans. Our attention spans for online receptivity are low, are less, much lesser than what they are for an offline mode of integration and receptivity. We understand how our brain works and we understand how a student grasps information, right? Typically, an online lecture span will expire much quicker because the distractibility from the screen is much, much lower. So when the student could actually look around the class, sometimes look around the window, sometimes just share a smile with their classmate, sometimes just look at the teacher in astonishment, sometimes just irritate the class and be able to get attention. All of those are also now being taken away from the student. The student is at a loss of all such distractibilities. So therefore also regaining our attention span becomes that much difficult. A good tip there is that actually, while preparing for the lecture, break your lecture in small sections. So, if suppose you're going to give a 1 hour lecture to the class, a good idea is let us break it into three portions. And after every portion, have some responses, some interaction with the students. I'm going to try and do the same actually with today's lecture. And let us see how this goes. Let us see if you are really able to interact. Let us see if you're really able to engage. Two, be realistic. Let's not pressurize ourselves or students to be 100% effective for ourselves and 100% actually attentive throughout the lecture for the student. It's very difficult. I can see Dr. Asha Jacob has raised her hand. If Miss Asha Jacob wants to say something, how are we to take it in? Can she type her question? Can we hear her?
On the chat, I
The
guess.
organizers, can you help me with this?
It has to be either on the chat or on Q&A, Surabika.
Okay, so
She can write on chat.
right. Dr. Abha, can you please write on chat? Otherwise, maybe we'll have to wait for the Q&A.
She's written, no, ma'am, sorry.
Oh, perfect. No, but you are most welcome actually. Please try and get as many questions in. Please try and get as many interactions in. Always helps the teacher to know that someone is listening. Okay, great. So we were talking about how to actually make the entire exercise more realistic. The students cannot listen for 1 hour continuously to anything actually being told. When we look at the visual medium, we also see that it takes so much for a film director, producer, actors to keep us engaged to the screen. Just the number of colors, songs, dialogues, facial expressions, everything is going on. A teacher cannot possibly actually even begin to compete with that amount of online visual stimulation. What we perhaps can do is that we actually can talk of content that engages the student, and usually it's a good idea to always tell the student beforehand that this is what we are going to study in today's class, and for students to be just a little aware of what really they are expecting. The other thing that actually helps to hold students' attention is forewarn them forewarn them of things that are going to be boring, things that are very factual and need to be taken up, things that actually will require them to just sit up and be able to listen to you with a little more attention, right? Also, student attention, some tips that already are doing the rounds, working very well. If you can make small PowerPoints and help break the monotony of just speaking throughout the entire lecture. We also know that sometimes students do fall asleep even in our classes. It's not unheard of. It's okay, it's fine. And every student has particular issues with a particular class and maybe with a particular teacher as well. Maybe that particular night someone hasn't slept very well. Don't take these things very personally. Keep working on how you can make the lecture most interesting to the student. And as we go along, and we also know this by experience, that we weren't the same effective teachers when we joined the profession. We've really learned on the job. Also, be a little kind to yourself. If not everyone is engaging right in the first go, honestly, it's just been 2 weeks that we have started teaching online in this semester. So we are going to learn as we go by. Take a lot of media help. It helps. Short films, short videos, short little things that you weren't able to do otherwise in classroom can now actually be done in an online space, right? This was the first very, very important aspect of student engagement. The second thing that I want to talk about, very close to student engagement, is teacher preparation. In the online mode, the teacher is going to prepare very differently. The teacher is going to prepare the dissemination of the lecture differently, as well as the uptake of the lecture very, very differently. So, some obvious immediate concerns are A, we actually end up teaching much more content in an online space than what we actually do in an offline classroom, right? Simply because there are a number of distractions there, right? Or because students take time settling in, students will slowly get quiet and gear up to actually get your lecture started. In an online space, the lecture starts at 9, and usually we are actually full throttle by 9:05. That is not what used to happen in an offline space. So the amount of stuff that you have to prepare for a class increases mammothly, right? You are doing a lot already to actually engage the student in a lot of material that you're going to actually deliver in just about the same time that was earlier allocated to you. But now, actually, it has become much, much more than what it used to feel like earlier. For the simple reason that we are able to, in a non distracted way, go about our entire lecture without really having too many disturbances, distractions, etc. Right? The other very, very important thing that has changed in the online mode for preparation of the teacher is that, of course, we do not any longer get student cues. So you have to really prepare on your own for the length of time that you want to deliver the lecture, which means that you are going to focus on pointers, you are going to focus on content, you are going to focus on some bit of training yourself to be able to go on without cues, right? The other very important point that has changed in teacher preparation is ease and comfort with the online mode, right? Uh, we were not all so tech savvy. We were not also equipped. We hadn't, Google Classrooms has existed for a very long time. We weren't using it. We weren't really using a lot of online ways of actually delivering lectures, organizing meetings, having students participate, giving them quizzes, giving them learning challenges, etc., without actually interacting with the students. So, our preparation for being aware technologically also changes. I'm sure most colleges and I'm sure all spaces are actually doing a lot of focused work on how they can equip teachers technologically to meet the challenge. And this actually requires a little amount of training, getting your way around Google Classroom, Zoom meetings, Hangouts, etc. It's also important so that you are not actually caught unaware by the challenges that the online platform is already replete with, right? The students are actually quite regularly uh, taking parts of the lecture or maybe screen recording what is happening, etc. And that this same thing can be seen as both an advantage and as a disadvantage. An advantage because, of course, your lectures are there for your own ready reference later. A lot of times when we were teaching offline, I would come out of the class and think that, wow, that's a wonderful lecture that I managed today. I wish I had recorded this. In an online mode, this becomes so much more simpler. In fact, we ourselves have access to our recorded lectures and we can actually refine them. We can actually work on them to improve them as we go by from one class to the other, or from one subject to the other, or from one lecture to the other. And we tend to actually learn with each passing lecture that we prepare online, right? Now, why is it that we are having to do this? Why is it that we really, really need to actually accomplish some amount of online learning? What? What do you think? What is your understanding? What do you think? Why do you think that we are having to do this? Do you think we should have all just declared this a 0 year? Responses. Come on, start typing. Tell me, do you feel that a 0 year would have been better than doing these online classes? Do you think online classes is the need of the hour so that students remain engaged, so that there is something, there is almost everyone is saying that online classes should happen and learning should not stop. Okay, that's wonderful. So crisis gives us an opportunity to learn, student engagement is must, etc. Okay, so let me also tell you what I did. I actually did a brief little understanding from the students' perspective. So I have students who are in also very, very far-flung areas like Leh, Ladakh, Kargil, also some students in Tripura who are not able to access the internet as easily as we are able to access it. Also, some students who actually are in remote areas of Kerala who are having difficulties in accessing internet. But even those students, all of them actually, just like all of you, are almost unanimously saying that online education or online learning actually must go on, especially because there is so much that is required to keep some sense of routine, purpose, continuity, as well as productivity for the students, right? So we cannot take this off them. Also, once we start having online classes, it actually helps bring students and teachers in some sort of a routine that we were missing while the teaching was not happening. So there is a time to study, there is a time to attend class, there's a time to read, there is a time to actually get off the machine, right? So all of these have actually, in many, many ways, become really important to give sense of purpose, direction, continuity, etc., to both the teacher and the student. And while we agree that online teaching must go on, we all need to rise up to the occasion. And it is a joint responsibility of the student and the teacher to make online education effective. Also, please, as teachers, do not take this burden solely on your shoulders. And that is, I think, where sometimes we try too hard. We try a little more than necessary to rid ourselves of all the burden and say that everything is going to be effective or ineffective because of me as the teacher. Actually, you might be more than 50% stakeholder in the process of making online learning effective, but you are not 100% stakeholder in making the online space effective. You are as much as you will please just have to wait. I'm sorry, distractions of working from home. Um, Let us get back to where we were. So the 100% focus or the 100% responsibility is not yours. It is definitely more than 50%, but also please ease yourself to say that I'm going to do my best and the rest is going to be taken care of by the students, by people who are also interested in educating themselves during these difficult times, right? Okay, what are some very, very basic ideas that we can work towards while we actually take up the challenge of online learning? What is it that we need to start reflecting as teachers? Now, this actually has given us lot of space for using reflective exercises. Yeah. So, how about actually letting students do some reflective exercises and say that this is what we are going to learn, this is what we have to do, and why don't we allow them to actually start working with their own space and time and reflecting on what are the processes that they learn best with. This was something that was earlier completely missing when everyone came to class. We had to actually teach everyone in one sort of a way, which wasn't usually fitting every student's needs. Here, we can actually encourage students to take up learning at their own advantage, to actually take what works for them best and revolve and work around that, right? Now, actually, let me also tell you some doors that online education has opened up, which were not so easily available in the offline model. And let us also realize that there is a great benefit in that. Again, from my own students in the past couple of months, I have learned that online education is actually something that students are feeling is so much flexible, which means that they can be anywhere and still not miss a class. We had to take leave, students had to take leave if they had to go somewhere, though they were available at the time of the class, but they could not come to college on that particular day. In fact, online class attendance is so much more higher than offline class attendance simply because it gives flexibility to the students to actually be present from absolutely anywhere, right? The second huge advantage is accessibility, which means the lecture is available online after the lecture is given. For example, the books are available online. Maybe the case studies, the stuff that you want the students to work on is all available online and they can work at their own pace. Another huge advantage is that we can actually share knowledge, even as teachers, from across the globe now. I have had some wonderful people interact with my students in my classes who are actually people who are in America or they are teaching in another university or even in another college. And due to lots of logistical reasons, were not able to come to college and interact with the students earlier, but now this has given us so much of ease to actually be able to share knowledge across the globe, right? Another advantage for the student is that they are not constricted by the teacher's time or they are not constricted by limited learning opportunities. They can actually study, read, not at the time that the library is going to be on, not at the time that they can be in the college, but really at any time which makes them feel most convenient, right? Also, a lot of other structural distractions go away. For example, the time that we spent in traveling or the time that we spent in looking our best to come to college, all of those distractions completely go away when we have to study from an online space. The other huge advantage that students have been talking about is they're actually able to eat, stay in the comfort of their houses wherever they may be, and they don't have to leave their cities and come to Delhi and bear both distance from families as well as an increased cost of living when they study in colleges in Delhi. So that is also something that has eased out. And I have in my own small little experience of all the wonderful work that Ramanujan has been doing over the vacations, over the summer breaks, and the pandemic. We have seen that teachers from various different states, smaller universities, smaller cities, etc., have been able to join such fruitful interaction. Actually, this is the power of online mode, and we should be able to harness it. Okay, I'm going to actually ask for some bit of feedback over here, some bit of interaction with all of you, right? We can break into the first round of Q&A now, and then maybe I will speak about specific things. For example, how can what I do definitely want to cover in the second leg is, a, how do we work with papers that usually require a lot of student teacher interaction? B, how do we actually simulate student participation in classrooms? And three, how do we get better aware of technology as teachers? These are three important areas that I want to cover in the second leg. I'm happy to take a few questions just to break the monotony of just hearing my voice. Okay, we have some questions here. Please suggest some strategies to teach management students with special reference to blended learning or flipped classrooms. With blended learning and flipped classrooms. Uh, I'm not I'm not very equipped to tell you specifically techniques to teach management subjects because I have neither been a management student nor am I a management teacher. So I think probably someone from management can help you exactly answering that question much better. But as far as the general notion of teaching is concerned, we will actually go about learning so much more as we go along, and we can share our own ideas with each other and go about getting better at what each one is learning during this phase of online education. And really, I mean, I think from what has happened really is that the future, something that we saw 10 years down the line, is actually getting practiced today. So it's not something that we never imagined. It's not something that was never going to happen. I think the future of education has come in too quickly as far as the online mode is concerned. We were, I think, and we would have eventually expanded ourselves to the online mode given the technological advancements that we are seeing and the advantages that we all recognize. So I think the future has just come a little closer due to the pandemic, but I think it also gives us an opportunity to equip ourselves better. Okay, exactly. Dr. Nakvi has written some very important, lots of apps that are available. And that is exactly what I mean by let us learn and train and have some sort of peer education as teachers so that we equip ourselves better. Google Classroom, Google Forms, Render Forest, Draw.io, Open Studio, Open Shot for video editing, Google Slides, etc. are all very, very important resources. Also, there's a question by Mr. Sandeep Bharadwaj. I have to teach students in Dutch in online mode. Suggest something to improve online education. I don't even get the question. I have to Dutch in online mode. What does that mean? Can anyone please help me? Mr. Bharadwaj, can you please help me? What does the question mean?
I think it teaches a foreign language, maybe Dutch.
Oh, it teaches a foreign language.
Maybe that is what I can get from it.
Is that so? If you're teaching a foreign language, actually, I have come across some very interesting softwares which are helping students convert words into foreign language, also, which are helping students do a lot of online quizzes to make the class much, much more interesting. And so, all of that actually will become something very, very useful for you to explore. I hope, Mr. Bharadwaj, you can explore these sources. And of course, it's a learning of a full new world. How can we use our dynamism in our online classes? They are becoming lectures. Well, they are, but they should not. I'm sorry, a lot of my own learning is right now in process, and I didn't want to put this out here and then be actually embarrassed because I'm not doing it too well. But there are lots of quizzes that one can we can do actually lots of stuff online. We can do taking we can start doing small surveys, we can do quizzes, we can do online solving. There is something called a Jamboard. I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a Google Jamboard. It's like a blackboard that everyone, all the participants can see. You can also share the Jamboard with students, which means that the students can write on that blackboard. And that blackboard is actually online. So everyone can see it. You can see it. It's like a big blackboard in the class which all the students could see when any student or teacher wrote on it. So that's also a good effective technique to use and a good tool to use. Um, Quizzes, Google Forms, all of that I really find extremely useful to make all students participate and make students make classes interactive. How online classes can be fruitful? Well, they are fruitful. You are teaching students. This question is so broad. This question actually means that we feel that these are not fruitful. They are actually very fruitful. Students who want to learn will learn anyway. How to keep students engaged and curious to attend class? Very good question. What actually helps is much like, take your cue from television, take your cue from elsewhere, take your cue from novels and books. You have to actually sometimes do a interesting end to the class. So an interesting end to the class means that you can leave the students with a few questions that you can take up in the next class. You can leave the students to find out something more about what you were talking about, or you can link up some ideas with the students and say that how is it that they would like to respond to that. Dr. Mahima Rai is asking a very important, pertinent question, a very good question to a psychologist. What should be the ideal duration of an online class? I think if a teacher is giving a lecture, and that's the mode of that particular online class, it should not be any longer than 40 minutes. And it can range from 20 to 40 minutes. And do not actually there is the attention span after 40 minutes pretty much just starts giving diminishing returns. It is not really something that the student can engage in after that point in time. How to abstain students from playing games during online class? Don't even try. Don't even try. That is okay. If they are playing online games during class, we can only request them. We can only tell them that you are 50% of the effectiveness of this class. And you are the reason why I'm putting in so much effort. You are the reason why the entire country is trying to get better at online teaching. And having said that, we also know that there will always be some students who will play nonetheless. So it's okay, it's fine. We cannot capture all the students at all points in time at in every class. That is really pegging an expectation too high for your own self. Take it a little easy. You are also new to this entire mode. Give interesting lectures, give fruitful lectures, give lectures that you feel happy about. And slowly and gradually, students will start surely grasping, interacting, and sharing their learnings with you, right? Dr. Nupur Sinha has asked the question. The problem is going to be practically of all theories that we might be learning, whether online or offline. when people would have to come out of the home, and the fear of going out in educated class would be more. As the discussion on NEET and JEE, how can we plan to make practicals or hand-on practice or training programs? Very good question. I think the hands-on has become online. So while you're designing training programs, while you're trying to design hands-on practice, start designing things that they can do online. Think a little out of the box, and they will show you will. I'm sure you will come up with things. I'm doing practicals with my students, and we have together been able to design things that both them and me feel will teach them a lot. In fact, much more than offline. And also, they are learning how to take interviews online, something psychology students. So we laid a lot of emphasis on rapport formation, making the person at ease, listening to body language, saying whether now is a good time to actually ask difficult questions. We are trying to actually now do all of this through the online mode. We are actually training students to be able to take interviews online. That has opened such a wide possibility of the spectrum of people that they can interact with. And that has become very interesting. So, in your own subject, I'm sure you can think of some things that are hands on, that are practical. And now, really, hands on and practical is online. So, being hands on necessarily does not mean being out there, because there is really nobody out there. Being hands on now means being hands on online, right? In online mode, will students receive it properly as the class is as what? Will the students receive it properly as that of classroom teaching? They'll adapt, they will learn, and they will grow with the online mode just as we are growing with the online mode. Actually, also to put this at ease, research actually tells us that the generation that we are teaching right now is far more equipped than us to warm up to the online mode. We are actually teaching a generation which was born absolutely in the lap of computers and in the lap of laptops. We weren't. We actually saw the laptops come, and we started getting our way around the laptops and then learning so much more in just the last 10 years, that before that one did not even know that what so much could be done online. So yes, they will also adapt and learn slowly. Probably they'll start getting so much more than they could in a classroom when they had to travel and come to college and come to class. How far we satisfied the students through online mode? I think it's a very similar question that was asked by Mr. Shailendra, and it actually means that, okay, how make and improve interactive sessions online? Yeah. Okay, now let us come to the second bit of the lecture, where I wanted to do three important things. One of them is actually the start of this question: how to make and improve interactions in an online session. Actually, as teachers, again, it's going to stretch you a little bit more, but try and have smaller groups of students meet you regularly and let them know what the regularity would be. So, like we used to have perhaps tutorials in the offline mode, try to make that a norm in the online mode. If you're able to meet smaller number of students, you'll be able to interact much better. Possibly, you'll be able to see each one, request them to put their videos on, and be able to interact with every student online. That is also something that will help us design better practicals and better hands-on training for students. So while we are doing so, ideally, the learning, the online learning, then needs to be divided in three very important categories, which we must remember. One is encourage self-learning, encourage students to read, encourage students to actually read up lots of text before they come into class. slowly and gradually make that a practice. Slowly and gradually demand students to be prepared for lectures, something that, at least in India, all of us as lecturers and teachers have actually slowly and gradually let it become very, very free floating, loose, not very strict. And we actually let students come to class without even knowing what we are going to teach. Again, it's a two-way traffic. The teacher has slowly left the reign, and the students have started taking it a little bit for granted that they can just come to class and sit around, and they don't have to be an equal participant in the process of learning. I think the online space, as teachers, let's start capturing that. And I think that is something that will be an important movement in changing how students look at education. And especially at the undergrad level, students should actually be made somewhat responsible for what they are learning. So share with them what you'd like them to read, watch, think about before they come to class. Sometimes maybe even write about 100 words on a particular topic before they come to class. So there is some preparedness. This sort of preparedness actually does wonders in sharing the onus between the student and the teacher. So the teacher comes prepared to class, and so does the student. And if we have this sort of a shared uh, partnership in education, that will really mean that we are redefining in many ways what education will start looking like a couple of years down the line. If we can really make this a culture, if we can really make this a practice of students and teachers coming completely prepared into classes, it will make a huge, huge difference. That is number one. The second aspect, so the first aspect is self learning. The second aspect is that now we learn from a larger domain of interactions onto us. So we learn from online resources, we learn from discussions, we learn from peers, we learn from people around us. The third very important thing is enhanced interaction, right? Enhanced interaction would mean that all of us as teachers should actually take out some bit of, and even if you do not have tutorials on your timetable, even if your college is not demanding you to take tutorials, I think as an effective teacher, meet small groups of interested students at least once in 15 days. It will really change the game completely. You can have one-on-one interaction, you can have online interaction. Let students know that. So what, for example, I have done for my students, that I have let them know that anyone who wants to approach me or have just a conversation, a chat, a clearing of doubts, something that you have read, but you haven't been able to say it in class. And we know as teachers that students operate from very, very diverse and different set of personal inhibitions. And you can tell them that I am available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 to 5 to take student interaction and query. You will please let me know one day in advance so I can make groups of students and schedule them accordingly, right? Please start doing this as teachers. It will actually give you everything that you feel at a loss of in this online world. You will start knowing whether you are being able to communicate with your student or not. You will start knowing what is it that they're grasping. You will become a teacher who's approachable, who's a teacher who's interested in students, and a teacher who's available for students to be able to share both the important things that they are not able to understand or want to take further from the curriculum. So I think small group interaction is something that we should start valuing. Mentorship is what we should start really, really valuing. And this is something that I definitely wanted to tell you as one of the three important online techniques as we come about. The other thing that I wanted to speak about is making peer networks. We have spoken a lot about actually peer networks. If probably some of you are aware, we do actually work, psychologists actually work with peer networks even in schools. What are these peer networks? Peer networks are, you actually put some students together, and you put some students who are so different categories, different kinds of students you put together. So lots of parameters can be understood as different, socioeconomically different, different in personal abilities, different in the way they interpret and intake a class, different in gender, different in areas and walks of life from where they are coming. All of these, so small little groups of, you can make small little peer groups of students. So 4 students, 5 students, maximum 6 students into a peer group, and you make each of the person in the peer group responsible for one another, which means that everything, if one of the peers has not been able to attend class, the group is responsible for filling that student in. These are also students that will have, and you'll encourage that as a teacher, that you can actually start communicating outside of my online classes and start learning to teach each other, learn together, problem solve together, work together. What have you done in this wonderful mechanism and method is, A, you have very rightly pointed out collaborative learning methodology. You have started encouraging that. B, you are actually putting the onus on the students to start learning together. 3, you are doing a very, very important thing of taking away the entire burden of loneliness from students in this online world. When you encourage students to interact outside of the classroom with one another, you are telling them that, well, the class doesn't end here. Please talk to each other outside of the classroom. Please talk to each other, find out about each other, and let everyone feel a part of the learning process. Another very important thing that it is already teaching us, and the pandemic should teach us this, is compassion. When students learn how to be compassionate about people who don't have what they have and can benefit from their learning and their experience and their advantage of resources or learning or their advantage of being able to grasp something faster. And this is something that you must encourage in your students. And you will actually do a fantastic job of making students so much better in both grasping of your classes, reproduction of your classes, and ultimately making them conscientious, cooperative, and considerate citizens, which I think is something that we know that everything else will fail. But if we as human beings learn how to stand together, if we all learn how to learn from one another, there is no problem big enough that we cannot solve. And you would have taught that to your students. And I think particularly students from management should learn how to manage difficult times, should learn how to manage areas which were never, ever learned about in classrooms. And I think that is what will make learning truly effective. And that is what will make learning truly, truly interactive. Also, I want to bust an important myth. Interactive classrooms are not necessarily about teachers saying something to students and students saying something back to the teacher. And that is also something that the online space has taught me. It has taught me that interaction is not necessarily, not only, and not limited to us being able to get feedback or get questions or participation from the student all at the same time. For example, I am actually already feeling that I have been able to have an interactive session with you because I can see from your responses that some of you are listening, some of you are, importantly, may not be talking to me, but you are talking to yourselves. And when I'm able to bridge that into the students, when I'm able to make them interactive within themselves, when I'm able to make them question, be curious, and get on with some new idea that they have learned from my lecture, it is fantastic. It is already interactive. And it does not always, and online we'll have to start getting satisfied with this, that we will sometimes have to learn to live with interaction that we cause inside of the atom, which is remotely connected to us, rather than they being in interaction with us. So also remember that interaction is not necessarily always something that I hear on the spot. Sometimes interaction is about me being able to, the teacher being able to change something slowly and gradually, block by block, chip by chip, in students, that they actually start to interact with in an online mode. So this interaction is rich, is different, is not the same as the interaction that you and I are constantly used to. But let us not so quickly uh, consider it as no interaction at all. So yes, this is interaction too. This is interaction as well. And these are ways in which we as teachers can also learn that there is interaction happening, there is chemical equations happening, and there are responses happening without necessarily responses coming to us at the very given moment. I have spoken almost a full hour, and I think I am already impinging on your receptivity, and I'm impinging on how much can you grasp and gather. So let us actually quickly summarize what are important things that for you personally are takeaway from this interaction that we had today online. And all of you can please type in, write what are the 1, 2, 3 takeaways from the lecture. That, and this is a lecture, this, I haven't used any other mediums that I have spoken about. I haven't used Google Forms or the Jamboard or a film or a little lecture from a TED talk. I haven't incorporated any of those, primarily because I thought that in this 1.5 hour I have a lot to say to you. And also I am very, very new to actually suddenly expose myself to so many teachers. I'm going to first try all of these techniques one by one with my students, get better at them, and then I think feel much better equipped to be able to handle this with a teacher community, so that I'm doing it a little flawlessly. I want all of you to tell me what is your takeaway from this lecture. That is what I want you to tell me. And I should get at least 100 responses. There are 134 people attending it. I want at least 100 responses on what is your takeaway from today's lecture. And of course, we are open to questions, and we are open to any sharing from any of the participants or our colleagues at Ramanujan College. If anyone would like to share an experience, would like to share something that they learned.
So, ma'am, I guess the participants are writing their experiences in the chat box.
I'm reading all of them.
Mhm. And ma'am, also some of the participants are also raising their hands. So if you want to take up their queries or
Two
then
participants have raised their hands. Please teach me, Anchal, how to take their
okay,
queries.
okay, ma'am, I'm enabling them so that they can talk to you.
Great, fantastic.
Asha Jacob, Asha Jacob, kindly please unmute yourself at your end and ask your query. I have allowed you. Asha, please unmute yourself. I have unmuted you at my end. Okay, maybe some network error. So we can take one more query. It
Yeah,
is
sure.
from Shabana Nujum. I've allowed you to talk, ma'am. Kindly
Shabana
please,
Anjum.
Shabana Anjum. Actually, ma'am, I'm, logging it with my phone and I've, placed it tilted. So I have to read like this.
Yes.
That is the reason. So
Yes.
Shabana Anjum, you can unmute yourself at your end and you can ask your question. He's also not responding. Okay, fine, ma'am. Let us then wind up with the session if you are done with it.
We are going to wait for a little while.
Okay,
People are
ma'am.
still writing, and
Okay, fine, ma'am.
let us kind of wait for them to
Fine, ma'am.
write.
Fine.
I think all of them are writing.
Yes.
Wonderful. A lot of people have picked up a lot of things. Yeah, in fact, around flexibility, it also helps if we can give a mix of classes. So, which means that some classes we can give as live online lectures. Some can actually also be pre-recorded, and you can send it to your students and ask them to hear it or see it at their own leisure. Wow, I'm really, really grateful to all the participants who have heard the session so attentively, and actually I'm very grateful, and you all must be doing it from your homes and doing lots of things with that. There is a hand raised by Dr.
Okay, fine.
Naqvi.
Let me just see, ma'am.
Yes,
Mm,
just see if that's maybe they're doing it, they want to ask something. Or
Doa, the participant Doa
Dua
Naqvi.
Naqvi, that's
Doa
correct.
Naqvi. I've allowed you to talk. Kindly
Yes,
please unmute.
Oh,
Yes.
yes,
fantastic. We
Dr.
can hear
Anchal.
one participant. Thank you, Miss Naqvi.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Fantastic. So
Maheshwari.
good to hear.
I know it's excellent to have, time-sensitive feedback right at the time that you've taken the lecture, and especially when you can hear the participant, it's even more greater. And that's what we strive for as teachers, because personally, I know that after every 10 minutes, I keep on asking them, am I audible? Are you understanding? Am I audible? Are you
True.
understanding? So I can completely understand your situation. Ma'am, the only thing that
Yes,
I wanted to discuss, it's like more of my view rather than being a question, but
sure.
we
Please
have
go
been
ahead.
pushed. I would just say that we have been pushed into this mode of learning, like we've not
Hmm.
very willfully accepted this
Hmm.
form of, teaching, learning, being available online for a fixed period of
Hmm.
time. And all of
Hmm.
us are teachers here, so we'll agree that we have to spend at least 2 hours preparing for a 2-hour lecture. So
Correct. Correct.
effectively, we are on our laptops like for 6 to 8 hours a day. So
Hmm.
the focus should, what I feel is, should not just be on whether the students are receiving what we are offering them. The focus should also be a little bit about how teachers are handling this particular stress situation. So most of the discussions on are nowadays very student centric, and they're designed upon keeping the students comfortable. But I think more needs to be done about how teachers are coping up with this particular
No,
situation.
absolutely. You have hit the nail actually just on its head. It is the scope of today's session. Like a teacher, I also have to be mindful of what chapter am I teaching today. The scope of today's session was really not about this. But yes, as both a teacher and a psychologist, I am most in agreement with you. It has really, and there are lots and lots of issues in just the topic that you raised. The fact that work from home is already somewhat of a gendered space. It is not the same for men and women. It is not the same for us to not be going to college and still be taking lectures. It has also made us extremely, extremely demanding of our own time as teachers, and also it has made us really run at momentously fast speeds to be able to catch up with this mode of teaching and learning. And that's why I'm saying that in a very short way, just as much as today's lecture and the scope of it allowed me, that really we just have to tell ourselves that it's not 100% my responsibility. It cannot be. I am as pressurized as anyone else during the COVID times. It's not like the unique difficult situation is happening only for students. The unique difficult situation is happening also for us as teachers. And all of us are trying very, very hard to be able to make sense of this absolute upheaval in our lives. Also, I often do it, and I often emphasize on really managing your stress as teacher better, because it will come to your class. You will start getting irritated and you'll start getting irritable with your students, because this is really, really so much for you to take. So also I think it's a good idea for us as teachers to continue to have some bit of good, healthy, happy stress management practices so that we don't feel overburdened. So, yeah,
Yes,
it is something that is a
exactly. I
very,
agree
very
with you on
important
all
thing,
points.
and will probably need a full session for us to go into. But it's a very, very important thing that you bring up, and I'm in full agreement.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Doa. So, ma'am Asha, I'm again unmuting yourself and I'm again enabling you to talk. Kindly please unmute at your end and you can ask the question. I guess she's not able to do
No, I
it.
think she has just said no question. Maybe it's by
Okay,
mistake.
okay,
Sometimes we just press something.
fine.
That's okay. That's okay. Great. I am also putting in my email address in case any one of you have anything that you have not been able to ask during the session or would like to come up with questions. Please feel free to write in. Shall I just type it in? Anchal, can I do that?
Yes, ma'am, you can do it here also, and you can just also give it to me so that I can email it to participants, and we can also share it on the Telegram group which we are having.
Oh, sure. Great. I've written it, and also you please feel free to share it. I
Yes.
think the more we learn from each other, the better the world will look to us. Thank you so much. I think we are good now. Most people who are
Fine.
were writing earlier have written in.
Okay, ma'am. So participants, kindly please note ma'am's ID, and I will also share it in on the Telegram group, ma'am's ID. So I would here like to take the opportunity to thank ma'am for accepting our invitation and making the session so enriching and wonderful for all of us. Thanks for telling the benefits of online teaching, ma'am. I'm sure many of us will surely implement your suggestions. It's always been a very lovely experience to listening to you. Now, on behalf of our entire team, once again, I extend my warm thanks to you, ma'am, for being with us. Thank you so much, ma'am. And my
Thank you so
apologies,
much,
ma'am,
Anshul.
if you've heard the word
अरे
physiotherapist, ma'am.
कोई
My
बात नहीं,
deepest apologies, ma'am.
एब्सोल्युटली कोई बात नहीं, जस्ट दैट वो तो बहुत बड़े डॉक्टर होते हैं, मैं तो छोटी सी साइकोलॉजिस्ट हूँ.
No, ma'am, psychologist is also mother doctor. So this is all from our side, ma'am. That's all. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interact with bright minds and teachers. It's for me, it's always a pleasure and a superbly humbling experience. Each time that I actually interact with you, I actually end up learning so much more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. As you can see, participants are still writing. They're also thanking you. So thank you
Humbled.
so much
Thank
for
you.
using nice
Much
words for us.
gratitude. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
So with this, participants, we are done with today's live session. You all can also leave. We'll meet tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Thank you so much, everybody.